This is where we started to see Carl emerge before he became popular the world round. And I would, not totally not expect to see some kind of wacky picks out here that might look unexpected just at that first glance, but turn out to be, in a few months, some of the greatest things that we've seen in the new meta.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, again, we hype this up a lot. A region which is the genesis, really the cradle of a lot of metas that tend to take over, globally, at least until there's sort of any balanced approach to that one here. We're going to be jumping now into the pick and ban, of course, and we have Max. From the looks of things, going to be locked away pretty much early here. And I want to point out as well, the predictions there are a lot of people on the side of Team Wood here as well. So this is interesting. We already sort of talked up a little bit of what to expect in the metagame, but we're bridged too far. We've got some really long lanes, some long sight lines, so no surprise to see Nani. Brock also picked up here.
Yeah, definitely like the Brock pick here. Especially since you're able to break open some of those walls at mid. One of the usual paradigms is this map is that you're forced into 1v1 situations. Of course, you see 3 lanes, walls dividing them. So if you ban out the wall breakers, you're pretty much guaranteed 1v1s. And also, because of those walls and just how wide or how long those lanes are with water separating them, it's hard to switch lanes as well. So I think Brock has a lot of versatility here, though the max definitely worries me a little bit for Rising Sun SEA, because they're going to have to think of something to deal with the max speed. When you get a good comp revolving around the max speed, they can pretty much walk all over you. Any kind of movement ability is very, very useful in this game. Love to see the 8-bit coming out from Rising Sun SEA. I think that's a great pick, but the ultimate counter to that is going to be Colette, and I think Team Wood might be thinking of that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we know just how sturdy that 8-bit is in many cases. Colette also just generally so good on heist, right? Being able to, throw that super in, get free damage on the enemy safe. Especially, look, if the rest of your team is not super long range outside of the Brock, right? Max is definitely going to be outranged in many of these matchups, so you might have to play around that a little bit differently, maybe even sort of a 2v1 lane. But okay, we're going to see the Sprout brought in here by Response.
Yeah, this is pretty much what I'm talking about. You see stuff that on the surface, it looks like a real wacky pick, but we trust the players, especially in this region, to show us what it's all about. Sprout, in my opinion, not really one of the best brawlers to be picking on a mode like Heist, but if those walls are going to be staying up, then it can probably end up being one of the better brawlers, especially because you can block off an entire lane with just a single super, and if you have that super gear equipped, make sure that you get the super back in just 4 hits and gradually work up the battlefield. I anticipate that's going to be the strategy from Team Wood. We'll see Response, sort of the MVP of this roster as well, working his way up mid, but being very careful not to feed any supers to CZK along the way. Early left lane victory by X9J, and good stuff all around for Team Wood as they rush down the battlefield.
At arm's length for as much as possible. Hiroshi gets a brief advantage on the right-hand side, tries to collapse on CZK, but it could be dangerous. Bear going down in the meantime. Phase shifter used by Hiroshi, but it doesn't get him out of dodge.
Big damage as well from Response as he throws down the hedge. Completely protected here at mid. Bear also on the left lane, doing his best at defending. Troy on the right side also, not face versus anyone in that lane. Seems to think that there's someone there, and gradually he'll be making his way up there. Looks like Hiroshi also thought someone might be in the bush, but they've scouted each other out now. Hiroshi has a super, however, and a good left lane victory as well for Bear. Bear is going to let him move up here. Response still trying to keep Bear at bay. He's pretty much fortified inside of this compound at mid.
The hedge is big for Response, right? It means that they can really just avoid that long-range damage from CZK, virtually forcing CZK into that right-hand side lane. Now Response is in a great position to pressure this 8-bit down, and look at that, he's not going to get away from the space carrots there. Response again erects a defensive hedge in the middle part of the map, and he just keeps cycling those. Bear flattened on the left-hand side here with a minute left. This is looking very good for Team Wood.
No doubt, they're trying their best to keep anything from slipping through. CZK especially trying to get some damage in here, take down Response, but he's simply so far out of reach. There's not really much anything that Rising Sun SEA can do unless Bear gets a super and can sneak around. CZK blocked off on the lane, but not entirely so. If he gets a super and can get some damage locked in on the enemy safe, it could lock in their fate. Team Wood taking huge damage, 85% remaining. 33 seconds on the clock. They're trickling in damage on Rising Sun safe, but one more escape like CZK did just a moment ago could seal their fate. 25 seconds left. Team Wood now having to retreat as Troye and Bear continue to pummel the enemy safe and now take the lead.
Yep, that left-hand side collapsing is not good at all. Troy is going to go down here, but it's a lead now for Rising Sun SEA. It has to be an all-in towards the safe here, ready, set, and so far, so good. Rising Sun SEA just collapsed in the last moments of this round here. They let Team Wood come forward. But you can see how much of this match was balanced on a knife edge there. Great start here for Team Wood. But
so good on this map is that he can lock in a lot of damage on the enemy safe, but otherwise you're pretty much acting as a super battery for enemies, especially if we take a look at the mid matchup. Response, he only needs 4 shots connected in order to farm up his super and then throw down the hedge. Then from there on out, there's nothing that really anyone can do unless Bear gets a super in. And luckily for him, he has gotten one quite early on, but Response responds very quickly. Has that super down. Bear not even really worried about dealing with Response, more so about getting some damage locked in on the safe. Could even teleport in. Warp Blast active. Big damage on the safe. CZK also able to shoot down that safe. Good stuff so far. A great start for Rising Sun SEA. And it looks like they've sort of identified the weakness of Team Wood's comp and now are circumventing it entirely.
I mean, Rising Sun SEA actually realized they read the lane swap immediately. So Team Wood are forced to spend the first 10 seconds of the round putting Brock over on the left-hand side lane. Love the read there, and Bear's now starting to really kick off. That's 2 gadget uses there, so multiple times he's been able to, blink forward and start to pressure that safe down. But look at that, 80%. What a great start for Rising Sun.
Team Wood can still fire back, though. It's just going to be slow and steady the entire way. Response has another hedge up, ready to go. But Bear now is ready for a Warp Blast to the enemy safe. It's time to defend for Team Wood. They circle back, hedge active for Response. Could be pummeled down by the Ego. Manages to cycle out the super once again. Now he's protected, but the safe isn't. 1,000 health left down, and good idea, especially if we are only looking at Game 1 in a vacuum. But once Rising Sun SEA were able to identify that strength, they pretty much decided to ignore Sprout entirely.
And X9J is trying to get a matchup against Troye in this lane, right? That's why we saw the swap beforehand. Bear, it's clearly been a problem for X9J so far. That pressure on the left-hand side from Nani is pretty scary. Hiroshi here has to use that speed to avoid as many of these shots as possible. And you can see why Brock wants the matchup on the left there. Now, there goes Manual Override. Bear going to go in and actually goes all in to try and get rid of the Sprout. It's going to be a trade in the end there. X9J, rather, Rocket Laces to get himself up in the air. 12 HP left, and he's starting to pressure the safe down here. Decent spot to do it, but he's firing these shots, which means he's not healing, so he can't hang around for too long. Whereas CZK looks far more comfortable here on the right.
Yeah, and he's getting real cozy. Even though Response and Roshi are rushing him down, he's doing his best to dodge, bob, and weave, and still manages to get some shots on that safe before being taken down. Hiroshi now accelerating up the right side. Troy doing his best to prevent him freeze frame down, but quickly eliminated by Response and Hiroshi, that duo. CZK now with the lane swap and completely shut down by the hedge being placed. And Response can still recycle it. He has another gadget. Here it is, and an Elim on the Troye as well. Team Wood holding their own. They're still at a deficit. They have plenty of time to do so. But they can't get too much DPS unless Jay gets some good positioning on that safe.
You can see how crucial the super is for Response, and if Response can't generate that often enough, is going to be very vulnerable a lot of the time to Troye or whoever he's laning against. There's been a lane reassignment here as well from Rising Sun SEA. They put Bear back against X9J. They want to put pressure on this Brock. They can't afford to let him come forward and rocket rain here, but that was dangerous. Troye got caught out there, and now X9J can pop that super, can let it go. Love the Rocket Laces as well to jump over that peep, but it looks like it's going to be the gadget use there to try and all in on the side of Rising Sun SEA.
Beautiful teamwork from Rising Sun. They could finish this one off. Bear's going to have to get good dodges. Troye also trying to dodge. Not going to get taken down by Response just yet. There's the final shot. Great aim for Response, and Bear. You don't need to pick a wall breaker of your own, that sort of thing. But no, instead they decide to build those walls up instead of break them down, and at times get good control and lane diffs, but in the end, CZK, I think, especially clutched up. Now, when we move into Ring of Fire, though, I think we can anticipate to still see some of those same themes, especially long-range brawlers like we did on the last map at mid. But on the side lanes, big bushes on this map. And if you can get into the enemy's bushes and start to camp out there, it definitely takes a pinch to get rid of you from that position. So I definitely love the B first pick from Team Wood. I think it's definitely a good decision on this map.
Yeah, just to be clear, of course, it is going to be Ring of Fire and Hot Zone here, and Gus getting picked up here, of course. Incredibly powerful brawler, and again, being able to just use the gadget there just to pop a balloon and get that extra sort of burst damage is extremely potent. Shield, of course, is definitely not something to sneer at here. So very strong mid-range brawler with good support capability, and it's going to be the Crow locked in here for Bear. So a bit of all-in potential when push comes to shove and they're fighting for the zone.
Yeah, and if we break down the Crow pick a little bit, Crow just a good all-around brawler. If we talk Ring of Fire in particular, I don't think necessarily a super standout brawler, but I think this could also be a prediction that Team Wood are leaning into the idea of Poco here. They picked up the B. B is the #1 counter to Poco pretty much everywhere, And especially on this map, if you are able to get a Poco without facing any counters, it's a great asset to have. Janet is a pick that I love, like I was talking about some of those bushes on the enemy side and on your side. If you're able to use your super as Janet, fly into those bushes and set up shop there, you are eating well. That's a great position to be in. And like I said, once again, it takes 2 brawlers minimum to get you out of that position.
Yeah, it also means you can play aggressively in those bushes and get back to safety with your super. Just tying up a couple of enemy brawlers, maybe giving your teammates some extra time on the zone. Those extra points really make a big difference here. Penny coming down, of course, she's really shot back up, into vogue when Salty Barrel was involved, right? Gave her an option at close range here. And again, really making a very strong all-rounder in many ways.
Of course, she has that, like you said, close range with Salty Barrel, set up the turret, especially if we look at the geography of this map. You have a big corner that is on either side in those big bushes. It's a great position to place it. You also have other nooks and crannies that you can place it in, like the little L-shaped 3 blocks on either side of the hot zone. Spike last pick, I like it from Rising Sun SEA in the sense that I think it will probably work well, in the sense that it is a strong and directed pick. Not so much. Typically when we see Spike, like Spike's not a bad brawler, Spike's not the greatest brawler in the game right now. It's just very consistent, and it's a very safe brawler to go with. I think that this could be an opportunity for Rising Sun SEA to go for a brawler that is pointed and counters what Team Wood has. Typically that's what you do with the last pick. It's really, really advantageous to be able to counter an enemy without them being able to pick after you and then counter you back. I think that this makes me feel like Rising Sun SEA are not so confident with that final pick, so we'll see how well they play into Team Wood.
A lot of these sort of mid-range brawlers being brought into action here. Of course, Life Plant going to be good if you want to spend a couple of extra seconds on the point. And of course, the way that your sort of pins here tend to spread means that CZK can scout these bushes fairly effectively as well. Pretty slow stuff here. Both teams with just the 6% here. Of course, Troy going to be commandeering the middle part of the map here on the Gus. And again, the threat of Kooky Popper is going to keep Team Wood on their toes.
Yeah, he's got to be pretty close to having it by now. Hiroshi camping on that powered-up B, also running Honeycomb to have a bit of extra resistance with that shield active. Great stuff from Response. The amazing dodges versus CZK. That is brilliant stuff right there, dodging out every single one of the curveballs. And also the Ghost thrown down. Not in a great position for Rising Sun SEA. They won't be able to get the Kooky Popper popped off and get damage from there. A little trade-off on the left side, but Team Wood still reigns supreme in terms of the percentage. Big jump in from Bear, shut down Rising Sun SEA, now threatened to take back the lead. Can't let Prime through on the right side.
This is scary. Response here, actually going for the super, getting a bit aggressive here. Where you're going to drop down, try and pressure CZK. He's able to scout him out, but great super from Troy to keep CZK up. Unfortunately, the Gus himself is going to fall. The trade is there, though. Bear's able to get rid of the Janet now, but has to make their way back towards the point. No swoop up right now, so no all-in potential on this B. He'll have to contend himself with dodging as many of these shots as he can, but as it stands, Team Wood still have a healthy lead.
Certainly do, but they're being very, very careful, trying not to get one of their members wiped out and therefore losing control. Rising Sun SEA, much of the same, but they're not having as much resistance when it comes to stepping on that point, especially towards the edge. Now that Prime has this turret up, though, on the left side, it's going to be a lot easier for them to get some area control. Hiroshi also threw down a gadget just then. He has one more left to avoid some damage. Bear ready with a jump in at any moment. He knows that Response could fly away and could also deal serious damage to him in close range, so Hiroshi looks like the ideal target for that one. Elim on the left side as Prime rushes through, now trying to pinch the back lines with Troya and Bear at that right side. Team Wood now take control of mid. A jump in from Bear, but no Cigar on that one. Troy also shot down, and this could be the win for Team Wood. Rising Sun SEA have just one more push left in them.
Very much a solo play there from Bear trying to take matters into their own hands, but I mean, they were missing a brawler. CZK was still on their way back from spawn, and that is a comfortable was laning against the Janet or against the Penny. He's getting absolutely flattened.
Yeah, and this is just one of those things where when you're playing into a Spike, if you're a player at this level, you know how to follow the pattern of Curveball. You know how to follow the pattern of Fertilize instead. And it makes Spike a lot less viable as a pick at this rate. And I think CZK might just be thinking that he'll be able to outskill this lane on the right side versus Prime. Doesn't appear to be so far, but Hiroshi gets a great takedown, and Prime gets to rush in to fill that space where he once was. Troy also taken down, and Prime's in a prime position on the right side to ambush CZK from the position of bushes. Hiroshi also trying to get the pinch on the left side. Bear forced out of this position in Response, hot on his heels. It's a great start for Team Wood, and Prime, he's staying alive on the right side. Another takedown into CZK, and Team Wood are looking fantastic right now.
This isn't even close, right? The safe mid of B here for Hiroshi means that Response and Prime can play much more aggressively, right? Push down these side lanes. Look at Response just sitting up here, and this is obviously pretty frustrating now, as Bear knows he has to go and get rid of that, as there's no chance of healing from the poke from Hiroshi in the meantime. Swoop in towards the middle of the map, and Hiroshi is he's none too fluffed here. He's quite happy to just keep holding that position and pressure down. And there's no way Rising Sun SCA are going to have any way of looking in here on this round. This is going much more like we predicted.
Just a little bit. We got to see that confidence out here in the following sets. But in terms of this one, this was all Team Wood the entire set, and especially if we look at the end of the last game, they were not letting anyone through. 100% to 3%. It's not a good outlook for Rising Sun.
It's worth pointing out that, Janet really is quite freakishly long-ranged when she's able to charge that attack up, right? In general, she's able to pressure the side lane down very effectively. Look at Response here. Moving up, throw the base booster down. Troy gets revealed inside the bushes. Hiroshi, it's just easy shots to line up here. Down to the gadget use, it felt like Team Wood are getting absolutely everything out of their brawlers here. You can see Prime as well, just pushing up. And this is what happens. If you lose CZK, if you lose one of your brawlers, any of the style of this region can lead to some minor mishaps. And I feel like, yeah, we've seen them. We've gotten them out of the way here for both teams. So let's assume that the jitters now have been put aside and both teams are ready to put their best foot forward here in set number 3. Of course, it's going to be the classic Canal Grande. Again, I mean, I guess a kind of game type that, stipulates a very specific way of drafting here. Seeing Carl come up here is no surprise. Having that all-in potential with Tailspin is so huge.
Certainly so, and I love the also versatility that you can get with that gadget. Immediately get the blue star off the beginning of the match and dictate the pace of the match from there. Team Wood are going to have to think about how they're going to play defensively versus Penny and versus Max. Of course, versus Penny, you don't want to continue to back up because that turret is gradually going to move up the field, and especially on a map like Canal Grande, there are only 2 lanes getting you out of spawn, and it's incredibly easy to get spawn camped in that situation. With Max also on the opposing side, they can very quickly lose positioning if they're not careful. Here comes a Poco from Team Wood, a little unexpected, but you have a tank on your team, and Poco's always going to be a good accessory. They're going to have to think of a final pick, though. Keep in mind, they've gotten rid of Ashe and Sam. They've also gotten rid of Otis. If they pick up a tank now, it could be a great asset to have. When you're on Canal Grande and you get that early game positioning with the blue star, it is pretty much enemies running into you all the time.
Let's not forget just how ridiculously tanky Poco Carl gets as well. Considered to be like a mid-range brawl. The guy's very durable, and when you're able to sort of jump in there with Tailspin and actually have that shielding, it is very, very hard to deal with. So they don't round out the composition the way you maybe expect. Instead, it's a stew here. What do you think Team Wood are going for with this last pick?
I'm anticipating Stu is going to be here for wall break and probably trying to outrun any sort of tank that's on Rising Sun side. Keep in mind, I've said time and time again that we are deeply into a tank meta, and tanks as a last pick are going to be a huge, huge upper hand. M's the last selection from Rising Sun SCA. Gotta say, not exactly my favorite, since there are not really tanks on Team Wood that are going to be super vulnerable to that. Response can always just use that flying hook in, tailspin afterwards. Sure, you can get stunned by CZK, but as long as you're in close range, and especially since Carl's a lot of health, I don't think it'll be an issue, especially with Hiroshi at the side. However, if you look at the synergy between Max and Ems, I think now we start to get a better idea of what Rising Sun SCA have in store.
Right, I mean, you're talking about friend zone, all right. Of course, Ems' ability, to pop the gadget and just sort of push away whoever's trying to sort of get there, because that's what Team Wood are looking for here. There's a lot of all-in going on, plus an extra healing from Poco means that, the effective HP of these brawlers is much higher than is actually indicated. Response almost gets caught out there a little bit, but CCK and Bear are very low, and they're very susceptible here to Response making the charge in. That's very quickly 5 stars handed over, blue included, and Team Wood now can set up here in the middle of the map.
It's a free blue star. It's the massive movement ability by Response that lead Team Wood to take this early game advantage. Response also on the right side. Far away from Bear, he can keep his distance from these enemies at all times. Bear finally gets a super and now clears out that left side on Hiroshi. He will be able to circle around this right side. CZK and Troya desperately need his help, though, and they need that speed to make big plays. Response gets caught up in it, but he does get healed. Here comes the tailspin. Hiroshi now with the elimination. Troya and CZK remain alive. Response down on the left side still. Team Wood in the lead. Great elimination as well with the screeching solo. Bear charges forward with the phase shifter, and Rising Sun SEA, they take control of the right side, and they take control of this game's pacing.
I mean, neither of these teams are playing sharpshooters, long-range brawlers, so at some point, they both have to engage. Ems really needs to try and, get up a little bit closer at least to her opponents to get value, of course, out of her abilities here. We know what Carl wants to do. So both teams really wanted to fight over the blue star. They really wanted to start at an advantage and actually, not have to be the aggressor. But that turret, that Penny turret is doing a ton of work, because even if somehow Response got out at the end of that last fight, especially with the Poco heal, it wasn't enough. He eventually falls again to the incendiary field from that. Look at the footwork here, though. CZK falls as Response stays alive again.
Super flashy plays on the right side. Response, he knew exactly what he was going into, a 1v2, and still managed to get a kill. CZK and Troya, though, now they got backup. CZK marching forward right into the clutches of the Screeching Solo. Troya tries to get him healing on the Prime. It's his really last lifeline to get this one back, but Team Wood, they pick up 2 kills on the left side. Now a final one on Troya.
Rising Sun trying to focus down on Response and get the stew out of the picture early on here. This is exciting stuff. Very skill-based matchup here.
Certainly so, and it seems like both teams are willingly putting themselves in this position, especially Response on the right side. He knows he's getting up close and personal in a 1v3, but he does finally have to pay the price. Prime also in very close quarters will be able to get a kill, especially with Hiroshi at his side. Another Elim from Hiroshi too, and Team Wood are looking fantastic, even though they've made incredibly risky plays so far.
Hiroshi ready to go on in with that super there. Flying hook could be pretty scary. There's big engage potential. And of course, protective pirouette means even with the healing of the Poco on your side, it's very, very hard to blow you up while you're busy trying to do what you do best. Screeching Solo picks off another one. Nasty stuff from Prime.
Seriously aggressive play from Rising Sun SEA, and it's just feeding those Poco supers. They know that this is coming, but they're willing to take the risk because they got to get in close quarters to engage. Response on the left side, dashing forward, 1, 2, 3, supers charged up. CZK looks for the kill, and he keeps on healing with the use of hype. Great use of the star power. Allows him to get that kill in Response. Now speed on the right side. Hiroshi and Prime, they got to run for the hills, but they're staying around. They're going down with the ship, especially Prime as he falls, and Hiroshi in Response left to pick pieces as they now sort of re-engage on the left side. Response falls in the aftermath. Team Wood, they still have the advantage, but this has been one win after the next by Rising Sun SEA. It's pushed Team Wood all the way back into their spawn.
Yeah, scary stuff against the Penny. You talked about it earlier on here. The turret is going to continually get put further and further up the map here. Hiroshi has to try and go and make the play. CZK, there's able to friend zone him back, and the Carl is down. Now it's a comfortable lead for Rising Sun SEA.
Still can't be taken back by Team Wood. Response charging into the mayhem on the left side, ends up having to pay the price. Here comes the gadget in. Hiroshi, big damage, but he's no match for the combo of Bear and CZK. Team Wood, there's just no recourse from this point. No combination of kills or sort of assortment of position. Typically, you see this kind of stuff when you have tanks on your team. But no, Stu still charging right into the enemy team, trying to pick up some kills despite only having 4K health. I love watching it, but it's definitely different from what I've seen in the past.
Response has been punished a couple of times by that hype friend zoner combo there from CZK. So this time he's playing a little bit more safe, and it pays off. Pays off in a big way. 5 stars already handed over here to Team Wood to start things off. Now they'll send Response a little bit more aggressively forward here. But again, you try and take too much space and you're going to get caught up inside the choking gases from the M. So Response now really respecting CZK a little more after those last couple of rounds.
Certainly so, keeping the distance. Here comes Hiroshi on the left side, though. Tailspin, but Troy is still able to get the takedown. Response now with the wall break as well. They'll be able to spawn camp Rising Sun a bit better with some of the walls broken down. Prime's still going to have a good time as soon as he gets that super fired up. Screeching Solo gets you that damage through walls and can be enough for the takedown. He's done it once, and he'll try and do it against CZK and Bear, both on very low health. They're keeping their distance. A lot more footsies this time with players keeping their distance from each other, trying not to feed those supers, and especially Team Wood keeping their distance from that turret. Hiroshi's going to work on it. But Bear and Troye pushing him back gradually. Prime now coming in for the assist, trying his best to hunker down in this position as they're 5 stars in the lead, and the clock continues to tick down below 40.
Yeah, this is much more measured play from Team Wood, right? I think that's sort of what you were going for here, because it looks like they want to force an overextension here from Rising Sun SEA. No supers right now on Rising Sun. So no ability to really make use of those. Response, okay, tries to charge through the barrier there with that gadget use. CZK is wise to it. Those going to back away. Super now he's up for that M's over there. So dangerous for Response to try and take the 1 versus 1. Troy wants to try and push it in a bit aggressively as well. Hiroshi, though, is going to get cut down. So much damage, and Bear comes in for the finish off here. Still a lead for Team Wood, though, because Response is able to do work on this left-hand side. It's 7 stars for Team Wood. They're in front for now. Prime, though, needs to be careful. Dodges a turret shot, and there's 3 seconds left. It looks like Rising Sun are not going to be able to close the gap. A very Cells go, okay, hey, we've got one more big game coming up. We can we can spend time actually preparing specifically for this matchup. So you may just see these teams coming in with a lot more scouting done on their opponents, maybe a little bit more of a feel for their tendencies. Well, if you have them, they're going to come in handy as we head to Brawl Ball here for set number 4. And again, an opportunity for Team Wood to take the match away here.
Let's check out the picks. Rising Sun, SEA, once again going with the Max. We've seen this pick by them numerous times before, and I believe, in fact, every single set, we've seen them pick up the Max, and Max is just a good all-around brawler. Is it first pick worthy? I'd say that's up for debate within the professional Brawl Stars community, but for now, they've definitely gotten some good value with the brawler. Team Wood, eager to pick up that IMS. They don't want to have to face versus that once again. Also, to continue that, IMS is just a great all-around pick on this map. Gotta acknowledge, though, that it's particularly vulnerable versus brawlers, particularly tanks, that are able to get in close range with the use of a super or something like that. Gray has been banned out since he's just that good, and also would have been pretty fairly good versus Imps. Team Wood, they also pick up the Penny. I think as far as draft, usually see this one picked up in the later stages. Both teams just sort of waiting for their opportunity, in my opinion, to go for some tanks here, as none of the really significant tanks have been banned out yet.
Yeah, crucially, we don't really see any of them, right? I mean, both teams opted to ban the Otis because the dual potential of Otis is insane, and Gray, obviously, as you mentioned earlier on, is very hotly contested. We get the Nita here. Now, this is, I guess, a rare opportunity. We at times saw Nita on like heist game modes because, of course, just she can go absolutely nuts, and the bear can just do a lot of damage to that safe here. Well, how do you feel about it on Sneaky Fields as we have another spike pick here for Rising Sun SEA?
It just doesn't seem like either team really want to be picking up the tanks here, despite them being so strong in the game at the moment. But Bear now on the Bear, summoning Bear, is quite fitting, but also is, I think, a good all-around pick on this map. It's going to be great versus tanks, and once again, that's what the current meta pivots around. CZK also going with the spike here, just going to be good for blocking off some lanes, is a fantastic defender on Brawl Ball, just wholesale. And finally is going to be great versus those tanks. Here's a Squeak as well. It's going to be great for getting that mid control. Throw down the residue immediately off the beginning of the game. Get that mid lane completely locked down for yourself, especially when you're facing the comp that Rising Sun SEA has gone with. No one's going to have the range to still fight for mid while also staying behind the line that residue establishes once Hiroshi throws it down. It's hard to say who really has the advantage here, but I will hedge my bets with Team Wood in this situation. I feel like it's a much more directed draft, and I think in a lot of situations it's going to be able to diff what Rising Sun has.
So much AoE coverage and a lot of scouting of the bushes, actually. Caustic Charisma obviously gives you a ton of information, and Squeak can quite easily tell if someone stood in the bushes there. So Prime, of course, going to play through the middle part of the map, but gets caught by Bear Bear to start the round. Not the auspicious beginning you were looking for Team Wood.
And not quite. Typically, you see the Squeak played at mid, but Team Wood have opted to play it up the left side. They do finally throw down that residue, but Rising Sun's reaction is simply to not play that lane, and it doesn't even matter for them because they're all grouped up around Max's super. They're getting shut down and zoned out by all of that area control from Prime and Hiroshi. Response still chiming in for some chip shots on the right side. CZK and Bear Bear staying out of range. Here's the turret down on the right, and the takedown with the use of the Salty Bear on the right side. Elimination on a Troye as well. It only takes a pass up to Hiroshi to slot this one into the goal, but not quite yet. They're also focusing on getting rid of the Bear and continuing to push this sort of line of control, their back line, up towards Rising Sun SEA's goal.
Feels like a matter of time now. It gets even more dangerous where Rising Sun SEA are playing. Bear Bear gets caught there by the Caustic Charisma. Hiroshi is able to get out alive. So much free damage right now for Team Wood as Rising Sun are forced to play well within their own half of the map. Despite that, though, the Banana mount some sort of defense here. CCK takes a face full of damage to try and get some map control here, and it will be denied as Hiroshi really has a range advantage, plus the help from Ems.
Seriously so, and he's continuing to use that to his advantage. Big connections on a CZK and getting that ball in a safe position. But it's still going to be difficult for Team Wood to reach. They're pretty much going to have to get a full team wipe if they want to get in there. And otherwise, they're just facing versus continuously staggered enemies. CZK will manage to break the mold. They still get stopped by the Caustic Charisma from Prime, trying to push through on the left side, but getting seriously outranged. Response also trying to get some damage, but he hasn't connected shots in quite a while, and Bear Bear, as a result, is alive and healthy. Now tries to pinch him from the right as CZK falls on the left. This could be the opportunity for Team Wood to lock this one into the goal. Bear Bear, he's trying his best phase shifter forward. Destruction on a Prime, a pass over Response, and a walk-in. Team Wood, with 25 seconds on the clock, are in the lead.
See, the Team Wood definitely felt like getting 2 kills was enough for them to be going forward with. I like the phase shifter forward from Bear, maybe hoping to like intercept a pass between the two Team Wood players there for a walk-in. But the timing wasn't quite there, and unfortunately just not nearly enough backup for Bear to get the job done. This is a good start though. CCK putting good pressure down in response, but the caustic charisma is there. The life plan wasn't enough to keep him alive. And no
of tanks being picked here, going with that spike, going with that Nita, and especially if we are hammering down on that Nita pick, it's outranged by every single thing on Team Wood's side, and as a result, it just loses lane on paper versus every single one of those. Sure, we've seen CZK do some good things already, but we need to see more for them to bring things back, as they are at the mercy of just one game separating them and a Grand Finals victory.
Big shout out to Prime, who's been in for much of this series in their first monthly finals appearance. Really holding their own so far. The M's play's been sublime so far in this set, but up until now as well, they've made a real great account of themselves. Another elimination here for the newcomer, and Hiroshi wants to try and pressure into the goals. This one's going to be an utter walk-in. Stick around, going to be used there, but Hiroshi is completely unperturbed. It's a pass and score for Team Wood.
Just doesn't really seem like that max speed is doing so much for Rising Sun SEA despite their best efforts. If CCK manages to pop off a super here, he'll be able to get some good value versus Hiroshi in particular, who doesn't have a whole lot that he can do in close range, but he's probably not going to get that opportunity. So Hiroshi continues pretty much putting him in jail on the left side. Sure, he's not taking much damage, but Hiroshi's keeping him there. Meanwhile, on the right side, Bear's doing his best to defend. Phase shifter forward, it's not going to do much, but buy them some time. Troye still trying his best to defend and avoiding a whole lot of damage, but he will finally meet his maker thanks to that final shot from Hiroshi, but it does keep Team Wood back in the bushes. They won't be able to score another goal just yet, but really Rising Sun SEA need to be thinking about how they put a goal into the enemy goal, because Team Wood, with just a minute on the clock, can just wait this one out.
CZK is struggling in this left-hand side. He cannot approach Hiroshi. Prime as well, throwing the caustic charisma down, only makes it harder for this Nita to close the gap, and Hiroshi now can smell the blood. Going to go in for the elimination, and CCK falls with Troye down, and Bear. This is the last stand for Rising Sun SEA, and there's nothing left in the tank. A walk-in for Hiroshi will secure